But
Well, it's
what's that you got?
the video.
Oh, it's a video, is
It's a
it?
video. Yeah.
Oh my God, you're not taking your father on there,
Yeah,
are you?
if he's in full flow, I might as well catch him in full flow.
Absolutely.
You
No,
better wipe it, boy, or you could be libelous, you know.
You'd edit it later.
yes, yes. No, it's
So this is a video.
It's a shame.
Did you get
really
this a
that
freebie from
Granny died
JVC,
so
is it?
quickly.
Yeah.
Huh?
She loved
Did they give it to you?
She was always
Yeah, I got this one a long-term loan
you know.
because I'm doing some work that's going to last a few months, so into at least March, April anyway. So
Her and John would get it.
Do you ever latch on to anything and keep?
She said
well,
that.
yeah, the Olympus,
Sit up all night
the camera
and
they
write
gave
them.
me, they've forgotten
We'd
about.
sit there and chat and talk about things.
I've had it 9 months, 10
Digital.
months.
Her and I would.
Yeah, haven't heard
I would
anything
lift
from
that
them.
phone up
So
and,
many digital cameras do you
They
have?
said when they gave it to me, they said give it back when you finished.
Great, I'll meet you. You know.
I've never bothered them. They never bother me.
So you're reviewing this for them, are you?
She was the type of person.
Are you reviewing
No,
this?
I'm doing something.
Yeah.
I'm doing a cover disc for
Oh, Mr. Chairman.
I'm doing
I
something
really do, 'cause
for their
it's not the same now.
a CD which we're going to put on the front of a computer magazine, a camcorder magazine, which is going to promote JVC, and they're going to sponsor it. So
You know, I feel
So how long is it going to take you to do it?
Although I must
March,
be
April it's
forward
supposed to come
and
out.
see him because
if it comes off.
they were like joined at the hip, him and Annie, because she
Mm.
did everything for him, you know. Say, come on, Jimmy, we're doing this. Come on, Jimmy, we're doing that. And that, you know, he's totally lost without her. Totally lost. The girls, she said, I said, how's he this Christmas? Well, she said, he's actually put up a little tree this year.
How is he anyway?
Jimmy,
Yeah,
he's lost without her. He is.
he's not snapped back into it, no.
He
Pretty
gets
hard.
times, he said, when he just.
If I'd have been over there or something, you know, to drag him away to bowls and that. If I'd have been over there or something to drag him away, drag him out to bowls and things like that, maybe, you know. But when it's on his own steam, he's not motivated enough for it. Jimmy,
The girls are very good. They're all.
they're very good to him, but it's not. He wants to get out of himself and get out to his bowls.
Yeah.
And you see, Jimmy is a typical Dubliner who gets to an age where he gets a little bit inward thinking. You know, they're very suspicious Dubliners when they get older. They can get very distrustful sort of thing. You know, I don't know how to put it. They can not distrustful. They always think somebody's trying to pull one over on them. You know.
You think so?
Marty, you haven't studied a thing like I have, and I've studied it from the time of my father when he started getting old. It's a typical Dublin thing.
So
It
we
is.
know now what to expect.
No, it's a typical Dublin thing. It's
Well, you know what to expect now.
honestly, it's there, and you would see it. You would see it if you were around it, you know. But the great wags, Dubliners are great wags and all that, but they can be very
Withdrawn.
withdrawn. It's not
I
withdrawn.
would
I
not
can't
say
think of
that.
I can't think of a word for it, but suspicious of. I don't know. Suspicious of
You're
you.
only,
Right.
you're only going on how Jimmy feels.
No, Marty, I am nothing to do. This is nothing to do. I've seen it in Jimmy. I've seen it in Jimmy when I've been out with him, and I've seen it in others.
And I've seen Dubliners are great people.
I know I have. I have too. But there is that little thing there, and it's a typical Dublin thing. Just the same as
I've
other.
never known it.
Just the same as other towns have.
Never known it. I've never known that.
No,
in
but you,
Dublin.
Marty, you don't study people like I do.
No, probably not.
You don't study people like I do.
John, you're not getting my autobiography now.
Why?
I said Nan Gibbons should have written a book because she had so much knowledge. She really did.
My mother was a very well educated
Can
woman.
you think?
She was educated above really what my father would have normally have been
She could
if he'd have been in the streets in Dublin, you know, where he was born.
tell you,
She was educated above that because she came from a
tell you things
more,
Have cut back.
you know, her family always had a house, not a tenement like us, you know.
Mm.
Like
But,
everyone else in Dublin there, she came from a
It's
posh
like
part of Dublin
Ron.
sort of thing.
knows more.
But,
about
well,
that
she
than
didn't go to
I
college or
do.
anything like that. I mean, she was married when she was 15 and a half, but
It's like
she
these
came
things
from a
don't
better
know.
educated type of,
So he
better
saw
type of
things
school
in the
than
law
that.
I never knew
Not
existed.
national, not just
Really.
pure national school.
I never
Mm.
I wasn't
Or at least a national school where she was taught to learn, where you weren't just left to your own resources sort of thing, you know.
Mm.
Like they were in the ones I went to in the middle of the tenements.
Come here.
And her brothers showed that,
Oh, I saw this
and they all
guy.
made good for themselves.
I said, "Well, keep it to yourself."
Billy and Tommy and Danny,
Mm.
all self-taught sort of thing,
Mm.
musically and mechanically and everything else, you know. But what else was there? Now that you're getting your family history, who else was there I should take apart? Well, you got the family. Leo has the family tree on that my mother's cousin did.
When did he
Only
get
up
the
to a
family
point.
tree?
What? Leo has it actually.
Who gave it to Leo?
I did. I
Why?
left it down with him.
Why?
Well, I thought he might have
Well, you
eventually.
never suggested one iota of that to me, that you were giving that away.
What do you mean
Because there's
giving it
lots-
away?
There's lots of other things can be added onto that.
You
Con.
know all that. That's why I was hoping that he might do it.
You never told me now. You see, that's news to me. You see, the Dubliner is coming out. See,
Um,
don't look at me like that, son.
the what's his name? Who else would know? Who else would know about?
Who else would have the information that Annie and my nan?
Nobody really. It's a lot died with Annie, especially on my.
Evelyn and Angela.
No, my
Mm.
on my father's side of the family, everything died with Annie.
Mm.
Believe me.
She
Jimmy would know little bits of it, but I don't think any of the others, the kids
I
would.
tell you, Jerry would know a lot.
I don't think so,
Yes,
Mary.
I
Mary. Annie didn't have time to impart these things. The early things of my father's side of the family, when she started having kids and that, she didn't have time. She didn't have time to sit at the piano or anything else. Don't shake your fingers at me. She didn't impart these things. I've spoken to her about it.
Listen, she used to tell Jerry
She left.
quite a lot.
She'll have left photographs and things like that.
No, but she used
In
to
the
talk
house
to
there,
him
but-
lately, of late, before she died. Annie was talking a lot more to Jerry and telling him things.
But
And he would ask. He was like John. He would ask his mum things, because I was there in the kitchen when he'd ask them. You know.
But she was the one. She was the one for my father's side of the family. My mother's side of the family, then the girls would know more about my mother's side of the family because they've been down in leaks and everything else, and but Jerry's been down in leaks as well, down around my mother's side of the family. But
Jerry's very interested in the family. Actually.
well, he's interested in leaks because of Andy Dowling and his dulcimer and all that, the music, and because you had a famous uncle, my mother's cousin, no, my mother's uncle, sorry, and he was a famous poet, historian, and musician
Mm.
in Leaks, and he used to make dulcimers and that for people all over the world.
Was that Eddie Dowling?
Andy,
Oh, Andy.
Neddy's uncle.
Mm.
Neddy's uncle Andy, who was my mother's uncle. Neddy was my mother's cousin.
Oh, I see. It's such a big family.
My grandmother was in service when her and my grandfather were in service when they met. He was a master gardener in a big estate down in the west, down in the Midlands of Ireland, and my grandmother worked in service there as well.
It's nice.
But
to
Mother
be-
Gibbons's family,
Family history.
Mother Gibbons's family, she was about at least third generation Dublin. on my father's side, about third generation. But before that, they came the Gibbonses. My grandmother was a Moran on my father's side. She was a Moran. They were Dublin, but her husbands, the Gibbonses, came from. Where Mary Duffy and them come from, west of Ireland, Galway, or Tuam, round about there. They were all from the west of Ireland. But there are a lot of Gibbonses over there still. A lot of Gibbonses went to Tuam, and one of them I knew at least taught in Galway University in Tuam. One cousin. There were barbers, there were Gibbonses in Tuam.
Where did Gibbon's name originate from?
Macabooin.
It's Mayo.
Mayo, that's it.
Yeah.
Macabooin.
Yeah.
Shane, my name's Sean Macabooin. That's it, yeah.
I'm Crahur Macabooin.
Mm.
And I'm Marini Van On.
No, you're not. You're not Marty Macabooin.
Ah, yes.
Gaboon. Nee, Gaboon.
You're not used to it yet.
I've inherited.
How did you come to meet? Did you ever tell me how you came to meet?
Oh God, we met down in the
Parochial hall.
in Finglas.
The dances.
The dances. Oh God.
She used to sing. She used to sing with Jackie Cartwright's
I
Five.
used to sing with the band.
Little band in the parochial hall.
Myself and
He was a Dublin butcher. He used to run a little group.
and I used to get 25 shillings. I thought that was
For singing. How much is the doggy in the window?
That was.
The one with the
You're professional
waggly
then.
tail.
I used to get paid.
Yeah.
And when I was only before that, I'd left school and I went down to Galway to friends of ours that had a hotel, a restaurant down there, and they took advantage of me too. They really, I was an unpaid servant down there.
Galway.
You know, down in Galway, Ballinasloe.
Mm.
Please don't have me on there, John. You know, please.
It's alright, it's not switched on.
And they heard I could sing, so the father of Gertie was a race, used to go on the tote, you know, used to go around all the race meetings, and we used to go all around, and there was Tuam in Galway where they wanted somebody to sing before the film started. They used to have a little concert before the film started. So they asked me would I go down there and sing. So I went down there and I got £1.25. And then I used to go from there to the other theatre, and I used to sing there and I used to get another £1.25. So I thought it was marvellous, you know, to get paid for doing something I loved. So when I come back to Dublin, I started to go to the dances in the parochial hall. It was only village where we were then, and it's not like what it is now. So we used to go every Saturday night to the.
It was dire. You go up these steps of this hall standing on its own down at the end of the village, you know. There's up about 5 or 6 steps up to it. And you go in the door and the girls all stood to the left and the men all stood to the right, you know. And when the band would strike up, you know, and the girls are all standing, the good dancers all hung near the ladies' toilet, you know. And when they saw somebody they didn't want to be taken up by, whoop, they shot into the toilet, you know. There was an exodus into the toilet. And of course the good dancing men didn't come in until they come in from the pub about 10 o'clock, you know, for the pickups.
I used to get the first dance of the night with Eamon Christie. I always remember that, the chap that owns the shop in the village now. And he was a fantastic dancer. So of course he always come over and asked me up for this dance, and I really used to enjoy that dance. That he was a smashing dancer, and it's funny, I met up with him 50 years later, last time I was in Dublin, and he has one of these big china shops, you know, really beautiful stuff, and he couldn't believe it. He said, "Mary Bannon, I can't believe it's you." I said, it's a long time since we used to dance together down in the parochial hall. But
I used to go in, I was
cycling.
cycling in those days, my hobby, and I used to come back from my cycle outing with the club, and I'd get into the village about 10:30. I think it used to finish 11 o'clock the dance, didn't it? Used to finish 11. I'd get into that hall at about 10:30, and I'd just come in for the last half hour.
You little lie, you got in before then, because you used to come over and ask me to dance.
Oh, that was where we wouldn't have a club outing.
Oh, damn.
Because I used to go in there.
Good dances there,
My mate Willie Maguire, his sister used to do the milk bar around the corner. Used to work in the milk bar around the corner. Because we had a little fiddle going there, we'd go around there to get a pint of milk and a long jam. You know, that's what you used to get when you go out in the interval. Pint of milk and a long jam. I forget how much it cost, only coppers, you know. But we'd give her 5 shillings and get change of 10 shillings, you know. And all that sort of thing.
Disgusting. If I'd have known, I'd have dropped you like hot cake.
Then I used to wait and take her home. But we really met to start going out at the annual dinner and at the annual night for the Christmas dance for the Gaelic Football Club at the in the football club hall. We were there all night, you see, and then we all went over to Mass afterwards.
Yes. And they were all sitting at the end of the church. They weren't able to keep their eyes open, and they're as drunk as lords. Imagine going into the house of God. And I said, I'm moving up. I don't want to be associated with these people. Because I used to sing on my own up in the church there, you know. Sister Mary Bride, she used to put me over all
Soloist.
the singing when I was going in for the Feshes and that in Dublin. She'd put me over all my music and that, you know. So she'd say to me, now Mary, don't forget, you've got to come down to Stality's on Friday night. So I'd have to go to there, sing my piece, and then go on to the dance.
So what did you think of him?
Well, in them days my sight wasn't that good.
Funny, I never had any money to take her anywhere anyway. In those days, I did have permanent seats for the Theatre Royal in Dublin. 1 and 6 of the
I
gods.
was lucky to get there.
1 and 6 of the gods. I had to claim those. I had to claim those two seats.
Very easy, please.
I had to claim those 2 seats before 7 o'clock on a Friday evening, or they were sold.
How'd you get that then?
Well,
How'd you get
well, you
that?
apply for permanent seats, and eventually you come on over the road. Otherwise, to get into a cinema in Dublin, you used to have to go up to Parnell Square to a bloody bent ticket bloke, you know, and pay black market prices for tickets.
The black marks, you used to have to get black marks.
Because all cinemas in town were all ticket on a Sunday night. So you used to have to pay for black market tickets. You probably pay 3 shillings for a £0.5 ticket or something like that, you know. But Sartini, the fella that used to sell the tickets in Dublin, he was a Italian descent, you know. But you go in there, he only lived at the bottom floor of a tenement, and you lovely big diamond studded accordion, just 72 bass accordion just slung on the floor there, and all sorts of artifacts all over the place, you know. Money was no object, you know.
I always remember.
He was the stand flash man of Dublin, you know.
I always remember when I started going out with Con and Sister Mary Bride, she from the nun from the convent. She always put me over everything, you know. I started going to school of music, so I couldn't read music, so I used to have to depend on her to play the pieces for me, you know. And she'd say, I hear you've got a boyfriend. And I say, yes. Yeah. And in those days, you know, you had to be very prim and proper. And she'd say, I hope he's respecting you. I hope he's a good boy. And she'd say, remember what I said. And I used to come home and laugh at my pal, you know. I said, Sister Mary Bride was giving me a lecture today on the birds and the bees. But they were lovely, though. Those were good days, actually. We didn't have much, but, you know, I think there was a lot more respect around then.
Go for rambles and
And you'd
sit on a
kind of, you know,
doorstep. There's
it
only,
was all
only one or
innocent.
two that have a radio.
You know what I mean? It was very, very innocent.
We
you
used
know.
to sit around
Yeah.
on a Saturday night, or it was a Sunday night, waiting for the top 20 on AFN to hear the top 20
Yeah.
songs. There's only one or two people have a radio, you know, an accumulator and a radio.
There's no televisions in those days.
No television, you know. You sit around to hear the top 20 hit tunes.
Remember when we used to go dancing in the uptown?
Oh, and on the odd occasion when you go uptown dancing. Odd occasion when you could afford
We
it.
never kind of had much money. The
I
money
mean,
wasn't there.
what little bit of clobber I had used to have to come out of the pawn shop on a Friday night before I could go down the meter. And my mother would go into town to redeem the few bits and pieces, you know. And she'd go into her sisters and start talking, and I'd have to meet her at the top of the village or something. And looking at the clock and sitting there waiting for mother to come home with me clothes, you know.
But was
And he'd come out all dressed up and next to it.
Monday morning they were back in the
They were
pop
gone.
shop again.
but Finglas wasn't a big village, was it?
It was
No.
very,
Didn't
grew,
you,
it
didn't
grew,
everybody
no.
know everybody?
yes.
Oh yeah, when I went out there first, we were one of the newer ones out there. One of the first ones out. Well, maybe the second flow of people
Well,
going
we
out.
were out there before you lot went out
Huh?
there. We were out there before you.
Yeah, but I mean of the tenement ones, you came from a house in Cabra.
Yes.
But we were the second lot of the tenement ones that came up to
Yeah.
Finglas. It was
They
the
were
ones
riffraff.
the east ones, the ones in East Finglas were first. The ones in East Finglas, Ballygall were first, and then
Finglas West then came in.
Mellows
yeah,
Road
yeah.
where we were.
I remember when they were being built. We used
Mellows
to work
Road.
on
We were the first
foundations of
house
them.
on Mellows Road, number 2 Mellows Road.
It was a typical village. 3 pubs,
Oh,
post office,
and the thing was,
You'd
you
have
see,
a sweet shop, or come everything, you
the
know.
locals
And
didn't want to accept
3 pubs.
the ones
There
coming
was a
out
pub
from the
at every
town.
corner, you know.
The locals didn't want to accept the ones coming out from the town. They gave them a hard time. I got in with them because I went in and joined the Gaelic Football Club, you know.
Yes.
But the locals didn't like us. The ones come out in town, they used to beat us up and all that sort of thing. There used to be fights and all that.
I couldn't understand that, you see, because I wasn't very. We didn't know much about life. You know what I mean? We were very innocent, so we didn't go into town a lot, or we didn't kind of. So of course, when they all started coming out,
You see, all the old village youngsters were all cliques. They all grew up in the football club and the boxing club and the schools together. You see,
So
the old Finglas crowd.
yeah.
so you were both blow-ins, really.
Yeah, well, but Mary was there a lot longer than we were.
I
She was there a
when I
lot
was
longer.
10,
Huh?
From I was 10.
She was there from she was 10. I didn't get there till I was, say, 17. I was
But I
17.
loved it. It was, you knew everybody.
So she really was old Finglas when I got there.
I mean, I can still go back like we did the last time, and I saw one of the old dears, and she was still sweeping our path down. I said, "You're a long time doing that." And when she saw me, she broke her heart crying. She put her arms around me. She said, "I can't believe it." Told her who I was, and she said, "Come in, come in, come in." So she made us go in, Peggy, Newell, and I. And then she said, "You've got to go and see somebody and somebody else."
How long is that?
Oh God, we had. I mean, how long are we over here, Con? 40.
We're over
7
here
years.
since I came over here in 1952.
Yeah.
Your
So-
mother came over 54.
Yeah.
Because if you look around, I mean, even looking at Finchley and Finchley Central now, all the pubs have got different names.
Oh
and
yes, they're all everything's
everything's changed.
Yeah.
Everything's changed, even in Finchley
Dublin,
Central.
Dublin to me now is.
I mean, I have
That's
a
only
job. I
10
have,
or
I have a
15
job to recognise. I have a job to recognise anybody in Finglas, of course.
Well,
Now.
you won't come because everyone you knew.
One
now
or two I do. One or two I do. But
married, and it's their children you're looking at now, and their grandchildren.
Their children's
so
children.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
I mean, I don't even recognise my own bloody family at home. my cousin's children, you know, I don't recognise them or their children.
So how long were you courting?
Well, we were courting sort of from the time we met. From what?
No,
from-
how long
Yeah,
before
3
you?
years.
Before you got engaged?
More than 3 when you come to the time we were married when we were 23 and we met when we were 17, 18. So it was 5 years.
Was it 5 years? Yeah, would be. Yeah, would be. Poor as a dormouse.
You must have seen
But you
something.
see, the trouble was when we come over here. When I
did.
come over here, when I come over here, John, I collected. I was redundant in the place where we worked, and I come over here. And that Friday when I was told that I was finished, I went into town and I bought a ticket and I went home and told my mother I'm going to Birmingham. I said I've had enough of it. I'm going to Birmingham. And she gave me the address of the Aunt Annie in Birmingham. And after I bought the ticket and everything else, I don't think I had 3 or 4 shillings left in my pocket, you know. Very little in a case to take with me, nothing. And when I came away, I'd hit myself with a 4-pound hammer, and that nail was hanging off. And coming off the boat, this bloody big idiot brushing past me with his raincoat over his arm, caught it and ripped the nail off. Bled all the way from Holyhead into Birmingham. I got into Birmingham and I hadn't a clue where I was. Hadn't a clue. I came out of New Street Station, went up into the Bull Ring, and somebody showed me where to get a bus to
Oh God, where is this?
bloody Sheldon.
Sheldon, yeah.
Sheldon, and then I had to find the street from Sheldon. And when they saw me at the door, the faces dropped, you know.
What are you doing here, son? Kind of.
You know, I wasn't welcome.
Who were you visiting in Sheldon?
My father's sister,
Oh right.
but I wasn't welcome, you know.
Why is that?
Well, they were all out
Struggling.
at work and everything else. There was the 2 families living in one house then, because Agnes and her husband and Paul Lanigan lived there as well as their own big family. And then I was landing in. The only reason I managed to get in at all was that Thomas, the son, was on national service in Cyprus at the time. But I was only in there on sufferance, you know. They couldn't very well throw me out, because my father had done Paddy Ryan several favours, you know, in his days, in the good old days in Dublin, you know. But
times, because you had to send money
Paddy
home.
Ryan could have fixed me up with a good job in Morris Motors, because Paddy Ryan was one of the few Irishmen employed in Morris Motors when they had signs outside the gate saying no Irish, and so forth, no blacks, no Irish. But he fixed me up with a silly job, you know, a storeman's job, which when his own son came out and he was fixing him up, he fixed him up with a job as an assistant welder and all that, and got him a job where he soon was earning bloody good money, you know. Whereas I was working for buttons. But I mean, I fell into my niche. I only needed a start because I liked stores work, and I picked it up quickly. But I went in there then. I went into the other part of the works from where he was. I went into the Wolseley works, which was tractors and transmissions branch. He was over in the Morris Minor car side of it. And Agnes then took me down to get my ration books, and because clothing was still on the ration when I came over here in '52. Sugar was still on the ration. Some foodstuffs were still on the ration. So I had to get my ration coupons. And I'd never worn underwear until I came over here at 20, you know. Didn't know what it was to wear underpants, a vest or anything like that, you know. Never had a toothbrush.
Oh,
Never had a toothbrush. We couldn't afford them. We never had any of those things. So she had to take me out and get me all these things, you know, the antagonist.
What was Birmingham like after Finglas?
Oh, madhouse. I mean, you couldn't find anything, you know. You could fit Finglas, you could fit the whole of Dublin into a corner of Birmingham. The whole of Dublin.
I found the Birmingham people very friendly.
Oh, I got on well with the Brummies.
When we came to London that time.
And once I got into the job then, I made friends.
I found the London.
I made friends very quick at work.
Very hard.
But the trouble was, you see, from the time I arrived,
get to know you.
I had to send money
Once
home.
they do get to know you, they can
So
be
I was
very
paying my
different.
digs to
But
the
they're
Aunt Annie.
entirely different.
I was paying my dig money, I was paying my food
I found
money.
Birmingham people lovely.
I had my fares to and from work,
You know, friendly.
my few cigarettes,
You know.
And I had to buy sweets and a paper every day to get the few cigarettes, because they were under the counter. Cigarettes were on the ration.
Sister, both of us.
And I'd had very little left to go out for a drink or anything like that.
I got a job.
Because I had to send money home, and then every now and again my mother would say, "Oh, can you send me some more home? Your father's union dues have gone behind and he's going to lose his job," and all this. And I'd go and try borrow money from the Uncle Paddy, and he wouldn't want to know, you know.
And it's very daunting when you
He wouldn't want to know.
away from your family
But
and
it was hard.
this room and that's your room and
Right up to the time then your mother come over, and
you know,
I started going out with the old girl in Birmingham, and you know, when I come over first, I was writing every. When I come over first, I was writing every day, you know, and then it was every 2 days, and then it was every 3 days, then it was every.
Keep an eye on him.
Then it was every week. Then it was every week.
I was sorry there.
And the next thing you know, I get a letter. Rosie and I are coming over to Birmingham.
Well, you asked me to come over.
Her and Rosie come over on an assisted passage.
You asked me to come over. Don't back out of it now. We're 47 years married.
In any case, her and Rosie come over, but they lived over the other side of Birmingham, which is a good 7 miles away from where I lived. And no
I
men,
was so trusting. I was so trusting
No men.
of him.
no men were allowed in their digs, you know, and so we had to meet out. And the times I'd meet you, and I'd say, "I'll meet you in Snow Hill Station." And I'd go out playing football and I'd get hurt or something, and I'd end up in the Birmingham hospital, and she'd be standing around Snow Hill Station.
One day I was
And after a
standing-
certain hour, the prostitutes started gathering around.
I was
Snow
very
Hill Station.
innocent, really, I mean really innocent.
She
I
started
never
getting
knew what
propositioned.
prostitutes or anything. And this fella come over, I was waiting for your dad to come off the bus. And he was late as usual. And this man came over and he said, "Have you got the time?" I said, "I'm sorry, I haven't got my watch on." I was so innocent, I didn't know. He said, "You do not know what I mean." And when he met me then off the bus, I was crying my
I
eyes
wasn't
out.
off the bus, I had to go up to your digs, you'd run. You'd done a drunk bunk. I was
Yes,
in the Birmingham
that's
General
right.
Hospital.
Yes.
I was in the Birmingham
I came
General
home. The
Hospital.
next
I had
time I
fried
got-
ankle.
The next time he came over, I said, "That's it. I'm not going near," because I was
Remember the night-
petrified.
We met
Absolutely
one night, and we met
petrified.
one evening to go and see Rock Around the Clock.
I never knew her.
I think we queued for 4 hours to see Rock Around the Clock in Birmingham. Bill Haley. We went to a dance. I started. When was it? When we see now? Get it?
Oh,
We got married then. In any case, we used to get. We said it's silly, you
we
know.
came
This.
home to get married.
I know. We said it's silly, this, you know. I was spending money. We were spending money meeting in town all the time. We were getting no savings, because we were both having to send money home to the
We
families.
had to send money home. didn't
From the time we come over here, we both had to send money home. There's other mouths to be fed.
We sent money
So
home.
we weren't saving. So we decided, well, we'd try and knock a few bob together and get married. And Peggy arranged all the wedding over in Dublin.
You used to send Peggy £10 this week and £15 the next week and £5 a week. We ended up,
And
and that's how we saved up.
And in any case, we goes home when we gets married, and I go into town. We went home on the Good Friday, and the wedding was arranged for the Easter Monday. And I go into town on the Good Friday. On the Easter Saturday, I'm in town, and I go into my Aunt Kathleen's, and my mother's in there crying. What's the matter? She hadn't been able to raise the money to get the bit of clobber out of the pawn shop for my father for the wedding. So the few bob we had for a honeymoon had to go to get the bit of stuff out of the pawn shop. So that was fine. Everyone went well. We got to the wedding. We got on a train for Galway. We had enough for a week's bed and breakfast. And I think we had something like a £half over. And Annie said, "If I can get some money, I'll send it care of the post office." So we were going out, we were nursing this £1/2. We'd get up in the morning, or the
Eat
first
as
time.
much as we could for the breakfast.
We got into this
It
village.
had to last us a day.
We were
A
told
day.
we were told of a place to go to for this bed and breakfast, you see. And we were stopping these kids in the street asking where Mrs. So-and-so's house was, you see. So we finally found the place.
No, we only knew the person's name before they were married.
Oh, that's something
So-
like that.
We're standing in the middle of the street with the cases, you know. Can you tell me where, say there's a Barry, I don't know what their name is now, but that's what
We finally got a bed
you
and
know, I
breakfast
cringe
anyway.
when I think of it.
But in any case,
I
we got a
really
bed
do.
and breakfast, and we went in there, and then you see the two of us down around, scrabbling around the bathroom floor, picking the confetti up off the floor. We didn't tell them we were newlyweds, you know, as if they didn't know. Picking the confetti up off the floor. Of course, when we went in there, we got up there at must have been about 8 o'clock in the evening. And she's a nice woman, I mean, we're only there for bed and breakfast. And she put on a lovely tea for us, lots of homemade bread and butter and jam and all this, you know, pots of tea. Then we went up to bed, and then we were picking all the confetti up off the floor. Laughing at us the next morning, she was. We come down then on a huge breakfast and filling up, stocking up as full until you were bursting, you know.
So she twigged that you were
Oh, she
newlywed.
knew, yeah.
Why didn't you tell her?
We were embarrassed. I
We were
was
walking.
embarrassed.
I mean,
I was
this is
embarrassed.
this is the
Oh,
2nd of
yeah.
April on the bleak west coast of Ireland, on the coastline, you know, opposite the Aran Islands. You could look across the water to the Aran Islands. So we were walking up and down the coastline there and going into Galway and checking in the post office to see had Annie sent
And then
anybody.
he sent the money and
Annie,
nobody
she hadn't.
materialised.
No, never arrived.
We barely had we had a return ticket, so
We had our return tickets, but
But things, you know, were so.
Did you spend the £half-crown?
eventually we bought chocolate on the way back to Dublin.
I'm not joking you.
When we got to the
we
station
were
to
so
go back.
poor, it's unbelievable. Now, I'm not joking.
Then we
were
got
so
back. We'd
poor.
already arranged for the flat in Birmingham. We got back then, and old Lewit, the old landlady, she lived in the house on her own, and we had a sitting
bedroom.
we had a
and
sitting room downstairs, nice sitting room,
Yeah.
front room, shared the kitchen. We had a bedroom upstairs, and we shared the bathroom. Now, you only had to have a bath on certain nights when the boiler would be lit, you know. And when she took us in to show us the place, and that's the gazonda, I said, the what? The gazonda is under there,
What's
she
the
said.
gazondas?
The gazonda, the pole under the bed. Our room is next door to the toilet, you know, that's the gazonda.
I was a bit, because that to me was, well, I couldn't
So
go.
in any case, the first weekend we're back. Marty goes out in the kitchen, she's making the dinner. She comes in with this gravy, and it was like piddle. Oh, she went out, and this Lewit was starting to interfere with her cooking, you know, and she wasn't the greatest to cook anyway when she got married. But, as she will admit herself, but Lewit was interfering with her, you know. This woman, £5 of potatoes lasted a month, you know, whereas we'd sit down and eat £7 of potatoes at a session, you know. Oh my God! And she told me how to make gravy, and it was like piss, you know. And I said, "Excuse me, Mrs. Lewis, we're gonna have to get some kind of arrangement here." I said, "My wife makes my food the way I like it." I says, "I'd be pleased if you wouldn't interfere with it when she's cooking. You have to do
Do
something."
you know what? She used to turn, if Con was late in for his dinner, she turned the gas off. Whether you were cooking his dinner or not, the gas was turned off. And I'd have the fire, and I had at this heart, and I used to have to try and keep us
Keep
lit.
it right warm on the hob.
I was so determined to get our own place. As soon as
But,
my friend Bernadette
in
got
any
married,
case,
we moved up to London. That was the move. You know.
Rosie came down one night. We went. That was in 1956. We come back on the 2nd of April 1956. Now she was moaning because I was due to start back on night work in the factory. I used to do 2 weeks days, 2 weeks nights. So I said, well, look, she didn't want to be living in the room on her own, you know. So I said, look, I'll when I go into work, I'll try and swap with somebody. So I just managed to swap for the 2nd week, arranged to swap with someone for the 2nd week. And what happens? I'd been waiting for a hernia operation. I was told I would be on a waiting list for 6 months. And before I went, that's right, I'd been waiting for a hernia operation. And 2 days before I went to Dublin, I got a letter in asking me to go to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital for my hernia operation. And I had to write away and tell them that I was leaving in 2 days' time to get married in Dublin, that I couldn't possibly take up the ticket. Well, they said, it's on your own. You'll probably wait another 9 months for another appointment. So I said, well, that's the way it has to be, you know. And I did suffer with this hernia. But I went away and I came back, as I say, just arranged to transfer me shift. Bloody another letter comes in to come into the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and have the hernia operation. So I said, well, we may as well get it done, you know. So I went in, had the operation done, and what happens when I'm in there? I get me call-up papers for National Service.
Oh yeah, I'll never forget that.
I get me call-up papers. She brings in the papers for National Service. So I writes in the letter and tells them that I'm in Queen Elizabeth Hospital. I've just had a hernia operation. So they write and tell me they will call me again at a later date.
How come you got called up with an Irish
Because the
citizen?
National Service was still
National Service was.
In Ireland,
I got called. I got
Irish,
called up
English,
before
Italian.
that.
You were in Britain.
I got called up after I was here for about 7 months. I got called up papers. But I was sending money home and it was important. And I told them they had no call on me until I was at least 2 years in the country. They couldn't call you for National Service until you were 2 years in the country. Which is what it was, you know. Which was the rule then. So the buggers only called me, and then I wrote to them and told them that I was in hospital. So they gave me a date, the 1st of May, which was 3 days after I came out of hospital. I had to go up down to Birmingham City for the medical board and do the general knowledge test.
Anyway.
They failed me, grade 4B. I don't know
You're
why.
breathing, your chest, your
No, well,
it was.
it wasn't that. It wasn't that. I was grade 4B, and I said, well, look, can you tell me why no? You said, you'll have to go and see your doctor. And because I'd moved and that, because of getting married and everything else, I'd lost the doctor that I'd had. He was no bugger anyway. The last time I'd been to him before I went away to get married, I swore I'd never go back to him because I had boils, and he was injecting them. And he put the needle in. He put the needle in. And I pulled it out, looked at it and said, this needle's seen better days, and put it back in again. He nearly killed me, giving me injections.
Mind, you're not very good with doctors.
He was an old doctors and dentists.
Oh,
So I never bothered to find out, but I've an idea what it was. You see, until I came away to Birmingham, I was a bedwetter. I was a bedwetter. It was a common thing in Ireland. It was a very common thing. My cousin Carmel Ryan, she went on being bedwetting. She's the same age as me, 10 days difference, and she had to break off a wedding and everything else because she bedwetting. She went to her mother took her to doctors and everything else. It's something that just has to stop. But in those days, it was rampant. You know, it was a
Yeah,
lot.
but
Of
how would they know that?
What?
How would they know
Because
that?
it's in your medical history. They get your medical history.
Yeah.
Be a doctor.
But no, that left you pretty quickly.
But I was a bedwetter, and I'm sure that's one of the reasons. At the time, anyway, they were beginning to pare down National Service. But I got back to work then, and I got another bloody hernia then, and a few years later. It's the way I was working. You see, by then I'd
you were at the
transferred.
bakery and you were lifting bags of
Well,
flour
before
off
that
the
even,
wall.
but after that I was working in. I went to work then with Paddy Ryan as his leading hand. He was the foreman. I was the leading hand, and we used to send down all the breakdown stuff, what they call the knockdown stuff. It's stuff they used to send away to Oxford. Doors, door panels, roof panels, trunk lids and everything else for replacements. They used to go to Oxford and they were all sprayed there, and then they were packed in cases and sent to different countries for spares. So I used to pack these things into Pickford vans, you know, these huge Pickford vans, and we used to put a floor through them so that you were working hunched up like that, and you were lifting 6 car bonnets at a time and stacking them in there. They were passing them up to you, you know, and you were on these shelves packing them up, lifting like that, you know, different awkward lifts. That's how I got hernias very easy.
I always thought you got hernias from the coughing.
And coughing is another thing that causes it. It
Cigarette
aggravates it.
smoking.
Coughing aggravates it. There's numerous causes for hernias. It's a rupture of the inner lining. But I had a good old time in Birmingham. I mean, I used to play football for Morris Motors. And I'd usually sign on for all afternoon overtime on a Saturday, and I'd be on the pitch playing football for the works team. And I'd come back over the fence. I'd have my truck parked in just inside the fence, alongside the pitch. I'd get onto the truck, go back up to the building, clock out, park my truck up, run back, go in, have my shower, and then home. And I used to get away with murder when I was in there.
You did?
Until I took a
With
shop
me.
steward. Until I took a shop steward's job, and then kaput. We had a big strike in the BMC in 1956. There was 13,000 people in the Midlands thrown out of work all in one weekend, from Austin's, Morris, all the car industry, and the whole industry went on strike. And I was one of the leading stewards on the Transport and General Workers Union, and I was in charge on one of the gates. And you used to have to stop the lorries and ask the drivers not to deliver stuff and all that, you know. And I was getting on famously with them, but you had a few bolshy people from the NUVP who wanted to throw themselves in front of lorries and everything else to stop them from going in, you know. But I mean, use your common sense. You've got a lorry driver running his own lorry who come all the way down from Scotland to collect 2 tractors. He's not going to turn around and go back up to Scotland without his 2 tractors, you know. You have to use your common sense. And eventually they're going to run out of tractors to give him anyway. But one day it got a bit hippy, and the police inspector put the horses onto us. And there was mayhem there for a while. And this Inspector Langley came over to me and he says, "Look, Gibbons," he says, "you and I, we got to get together and work this out," he says. "My men," he says, "will stop those lorries 100 yards before they get to the gate. You and another one of your representatives will come and talk to the drivers, but if the driver still wants to go along, then there's nothing more you can do. They go, and that's it." And that worked. We had a great arrangement there, you know, and that worked through the rest of the strike. But then we used to go over to the pub up the top of the road, and all the newspaper reporters were just back from the Suez business then, you know. All the top reporters are all back from Suez, and they were all reporting on the BMC strikes, you see. And they were up in this pub up in Swan Yardley, and they were pumping us for information about the strike and the picketing and all this. And they were pumping us full of pints, you know. We were lashing the pints into us and giving them no information, whatever. They were all on expensive accounts, they didn't mind, you know. But I used to go home locked.
But it was only ever once you came home.
But once I was really
and
bad.
You were told
The day the strike finished,
if you ever done it again,
the strike finished on a Friday lunchtime, and we all adjourned to the Morris Motors Club. Now the steward of the club was an motorcycle cop, an ex-commando, you know, a big brute of a fellow, but he was all for the workers, you know. He used to put on soup and all that for the pickets, and so we had a great day in there. But I didn't like bottled Guinness, and they didn't do draft Guinness in those days down there, so I used to drink cider. Oh no, I used to drink bottled Guinness. I started drinking bottled Guinness, but then I went in there that Friday and he's kind of got no bottled Guinness. He's left. Try a Mackeson, he says, the same thing. I tried a Mackeson, and of course it's sweet stout. Oh, nearly got sick, so I started drinking pints of cider. And I proceeded to drink 24 pints of Bulmer's cider before I went home. Now I was supposed to be home at 8 o'clock. Rosie was courting Les at the time, and they were due up for tea. So your bold fellow Johnny Riley drives me home in his V8 station wagon at about 10 to 12. And I roll in the door, plunk down
Don't
into
forget that night, will you?
plunk down into the chair, you know. Rosie and Les sitting on the settee. I suppose you want something to eat. Suppose you're hungry. Yeah, I said I could do something to eat. She says, "What would you like?" I said, "A couple of eggs, anything." And she come back in with 2 eggs in her hand. She says, "How would you like them?" or something, you know. And I made some silly kind of remark.
Cooked.
And some
And before he had it.
both eggs right in the middle of me mush.
I tell you, he didn't come in drunk again. Well, I can still see Rosie laughing.
Rosie's dead now as well, unfortunately.
I could still see poor Rose laughing, you know, and Lester. Just, he was so smarmy, sitting there, laughing his head off.
We went
And
to
I just happened to say, what way do you want them cooked? You know, and he says, cooked. And before I had cooked, bang!
when she came over first with Rosie, she used to be in digs with Rosie, you know, and in a famous place that became famous then for the plaques and everything later on. What was it? Handsworth.
Yeah.
Where we lived
It
in
was lovely
Handsworth.
when we were there, but
Yeah, but she used to get out, have someone to get out in her night clothes at 1 o'clock in the morning, find doctors for Rosie sometimes, because Rosie was
she was very
bad
bad,
heart
yeah.
and all that, you know. And I think Francis's bloke used to beat her up a little bit now and again, didn't he?
I never, and he did, he was a bit, but I never had much dealings with Frances. She was a nice girl, but she was Rosie's friend, you know.
But then,
times were hard then, you know.
because Les had just come back, Les was called up again for the Suez as well, because he was a sergeant in the guards or something, in the Birmingham Fusiliers or something. He was called up for Suez. Les Bruton.
And the time that Rose and Les
Oh, when Rosie was getting married.
getting married.
Now we'd moved up to
Oh.
London. We'd moved up to
Yes,
London
we
by
had
then,
moved to London.
and Mary was pregnant with John. And my father was staying up here with us. And mother was coming over. Oh no, my father wasn't staying
No,
with us.
he wasn't.
No.
No.
No, mother was coming over.
To bring the wedding dresses,
She was bringing the
wedding
wedding,
cake,
and
all for Rose's
two of my
wedding.
sisters were coming over to be bridesmaids for
bridesmaids.
Rosie. And next thing I know, there's a knock on our door, 12 o'clock at night. Mr. Gibbons, police. We've just got a call from Dublin. Would your wife bring a bridesmaid's dress with her to Birmingham? Your mother has missed the boat. And she's also bringing a cake for the wedding.
Oh,
So we had to go down to Birmingham, and I had to go running around Birmingham trying to hire an imitation cake for the table, because mother was bringing the cake.
These ones in the models in the windows.
Yeah.
How could she
They're
come to
imitation.
miss the boat?
Nan was.
Nan
that
was
her
famous.
Hobby. That was,
That
her
was my
hobby,
mother's
missing
hobby.
the boat.
My mother
She
always
never
used.
got the boat on time.
My mother always used to arrive at Holyhead just as they were closing the gates, pulling the gangplank
And I
in.
was 3 months pregnant on you.
So your mother was 3 months pregnant, and she
And
had to
I
try and
had been
squeeze
Doreen's-
into her wedding dress to be
I
a
was
bridesmaid.
Doreen's bride. No,
Or
no,
Doreen's
it
bride.
wasn't shown then. I was Doreen's bridesmaid, so I'd had this bridesmaid's dress. And of course, I had to get down to be bridesmaid for Rosie. But I'll never forget it as long as I live. The mother was, bless her soul, she was
She arrived over then in the middle of the
never could be
reception.
on time for anything.
Arrived in the middle of the reception, came on the afternoon
And they
boat
all arrived with the dresses and the cake.
after the wedding.
I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it.
So
But
holy,
it's the things that, you know, when you think really that happened.
she was a holy terrible
And I
mother.
was-
My
I
mother
was-
was always on last minute.
We were terrified because Rose wanted to go home after we come to Birmingham. Every time we'd say, Rose, come on out with us. We're going to pictures. Come with us. And then Rose would say, oh, Mom, I want to go home. I want to go home. She'd be crying her eyes out. And I'd say to Connor, I
And on a
think
6-month
give her
contract,
the
you
money,
see, with the
you know,
job.
give her
Yeah.
the fare. Let her go home to Dublin. But she stayed on. Like everything else, you get used to it. You got used
Then
to
she
the
met
job
Les, of
and
course, and
she met Les, and that's it. But
they were only married, and she had
It
a
was-
serious heart operation.
times were very hard then, really, because we used to have to send money home every week. And if you had to work really hard to earn an extra little bit of bonus so that you could send that bit of extra
You know
money.
what? They could
We
out
were
the
saving for
overtime.
to be wedding, to be married.
They
as
could
well.
out the overtime in Morris Motors 2 months before I was due to pack up to get married. And you know what I used to do? I used to go down to the coal yards in Nichols in Birmingham. A big Donegal man brought me down to do this. And you used to have to stand there with a shovel about that square and fill these boat cars full of coal. and you got so much per boat car. You got 2 men to a boat car to fill it. And I mean, I hadn't got the muscle. I was fairly strong, but not that strong. I mean, these fellas were yokels from farms who had wielded shovels all their lives, you know. But I used to run a plank from the top of the coal over to the thing, and I used to shoot it in from the top, and he'd be shoveling it up from the ground, you know, because of 2 men to a boat car. And the lucky ones onto the site in the morning got boat cars that were already 3/4 full, you see, that had been left over from the shift the previous day. So once the boat car was full, that's where your morning's work done. You got your 25 shillings or whatever it was. But it could take you 6 hours to earn that 25 shillings filling a boat car, you know. And you knew you'd been working, you're throwing this coal up in half, but it's falling back on top of you. But I did that because I needed the extra few shillings.
But it's like everything else, you know. My mum, dad had died when I was 10, so my mother had nothing really. She depended on every halfpenny you could give her, you know. Even after we were married, you send them home a few pounds because they really depended on you, you know. But
Then I lost my best friend. I lost my best friend for a while in Dublin because of the wedding.
And I hate ways.
I'd invited him to the wedding and his wife, and I promised to get them a car to pick them up in Ballyfermot and bring them into the reception. And I couldn't get anybody to do it. I was going like a maniac trying to borrow a car myself half an hour before I was due in the church to go and pick Willie and Bridie up, you know. They were my best friends from the cycling club.
Always had everything, and new outfits for the summer.
I never saw him again for about 20 years. Had to apologise to him.
But when my father died, there was nothing. If he had lived 3 months, he would have had a pension for life. Mother only had £6.50 a month. A month. So that was nothing to bring up a family on, you know. So as soon as Peggy started working, she used to have to give Mommy money. Then we all, as we came to 14, 15, you had to go out to work. It was a place of Coventry. I wanted
They should be coming home soon.
Because I missed most of my life. I was in hospital.
So they went to
So I
midnight
missed
mass,
an
did they?
awful lot of time in school.
Where did they
But
go?
I love school.
Mutton Lane, just round the
Just
corner.
couldn't afford it, just had to go, earn the wages, and that was it.
But there you are, those little bits of little snatches of the history.
But that's why I hate to see the children with so much today, and they have no regard.
But I mean, when we were all youngsters,
Anything, you know. I remember as a child, when I was in bed with TV, I was in bed 7 months before my father died, and my mum used to go down to the wool mills and get all these offcuts of wool, and I used to knit and make dolls. I'd make my own doll, make the hair, make the face, everything. Then I'd make the clothes for it. And that's how we got on as children, you know. You never had much money, but you made
when we were kids,
around everything.
and embroidery. Little things you'd learn to embroider and everything.
see, there's a couple of
So the kids don't do anything like that
my
today, 'cause
mother's
everything's
sisters were
handed to them,
dressmakers,
you know.
and
And they lose an awful lot, the children, I think, today. They really do. They lose the value of everything. We, as we got older, even as I say, 16 or 17, when we earned the money, it was, oh, what can I get? I'll save that. And you'd save it until you had enough to buy what you wanted. You'd never get into debt because you couldn't afford debt. You know what I mean?
my mother's sister Kathleen was a dressmaker, and she used to make for a fairly high class clientele, you know, in Dublin. So all the offshoots and all that, all the cutouts and bits and pieces, she used to save them. And then Christmas time, when all the younger kids were all put to bed, I used to go with my mother and meet with her sisters and all that up in Aunt Kathleen's, and then they used to all get stuck in then all night then, making little pipers outfits and nurses outfits and cowboy outfits, you know. They used to buy the dolls' faces in the dolls' hospital in Mary Street in Dublin, and make the dolls up for the girls, and oh yeah, they would be at it all night. I'd been stood out. She lived in a flat over a pork butcher's in Dublin, and I used to be stood out on the window over the top of the pork butcher shop, cleaning her windows while they were finishing off 6 o'clock on a Christmas morning, you know. They'd be all night there. Then we'd all have to dash home before the kids all woke, the younger ones woke up, to put all the toys under their pillows and for them.
You know.
But I mean, if we got a little cap gun or a water pistol, that was fantastic. You never got anything more than that. God, that was
Well, I remember as a child going into the neighbour's house, and we always in Dublin when I'm going back to when we were about 6 or 7, and they always had the bath in the kitchen with a wooden thing over it, so you didn't know it was a bath, but the bath was there. We used to put stage shows on, put a curtain up and have stage shows. We were kids.
Is there any room at the inn?
Come on in.
Room at the inn.
Come on in, you holy people.
Any room at the inn.
Whoa.
Hi. Nice to see you again.
Hello there.
Happy Christmas.
How's that working? All right, mate?
Hey, yeah.
Happy
Yeah.
Christmas.
Bringing all that bloody cold air in with your Piper.
It's not cold tonight. It's quite, honestly, it's quite mild out.
Happy birthday.
I don't think it's cold at all.
Happy birthday, dear Nuala.
Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Oh God, yes.
Don't like to be reminded of them now.
Oh, you forgot.
They were singing happy birthday to
Hi,
baby
Peggy.
Jesus, but he didn't sing happy birthday to me. Did you?
What I want to know is, now this is Mr. Me. You go to
Peggy
Christmas
is
Eve.
past the
Oh, here
bedtime.
we
No,
go.
no, no, listen, just explain to me. To celebrate the birth of Jesus. How can you celebrate the Last Supper at the same time?
What do you mean?
Well, you
What
think
are you
they'd leave that out? You go and celebrate.
Give over, give over. We can
This
get
is
you
no, honestly, this is a genuine
The
question.
mass-
I'm just,
The
I'm new.
Mass is all based around the Last Supper. Right? That's
Oh,
our
I
Mass.
thought you went to celebrate the birth of Jesus.
What, to bring your own public?
Last Supper, you're getting
I'm being honest,
Easter
I'm
mixed
not being
up with
nasty, I'm
bloody.
just-
My
just
God, I
asking
thought
if it
you
doesn't
mixed
make
with
sense to me,
Christians.
That's what I mean.
We're going to take this after away as well.
Oh,
Oh, grab a bit of try your body down.
What are you doing? You're
Do you want to have sandwich?
I must get my laptop something to
I've
eat.
got
My
1 minute
stomach's
left
talking
on
to
this damn tape, and I'm
stomach's
going to
talking
use
to
it
me.
up.
Do you want to have sandwich?
Yes,
Put
please.
those
Is
teeth
it-
back
is
in,
that
for
yours?
God's
Is that your one? Andy, stop it. Is that your one or is it one you
It's-
borrowed?
One he's reviewing.
Stolen from JVC.
One you nicked.
Ah,